Shen Wulong is stronger than everyone else in the Kengan universe, and it isn't close. Characters capable of shaking mountains and destroying various parts of forest, even the lower tiers can 1v1 gigantic animals of the wild, and are all nothing compared to the connector. Likewise for speed showings, like blocking a Tommy gun or reacting to bullets in other ways. If the connector were to wield his power haphazardly, he would completely collapse the balance of the world. He has the power of an entire nation's military, all within one man. Sounds very similar to someone else. Yujiro Hanma, the ogre and ultimate demon of the Baki universe. After 400 chapters of Kengan, alongside a promotional chapter combining both series, a single character has finally broken into the higher realm of Baki scaling. Therefore, in today's video, I'll be answering the much requested how strong is Shen Wulong and an updated how strong is Yujiro Hanma to reveal which one would truly win in this clash. The biggest dive I've ever done into the scaling of the Kengan Ashura and Kengan Omega universe will be provided throughout today's video. To understand the degree of strength the connector has, I guarantee you'll learn something in today's video. Who is Shen Wulong and why is he so strong? His existence pretty much works like this. The legend is that he was an immortal sage that lived in the mountains until he was required to fight, beginning 1300 years ago compared to current Kengan Omega, when the connector faced the then leader of the worm and defeated him, taking the worm under his control and fighting a war against the Wu clan, defeating them without much trouble. This leaves us with the first question: how is Shen Wulong immortal? He's been doing a form of reincarnation known as Hushang, which works in the following way. It requires a receiver known as a connector. Ideally, this connector should be as young as possible, preferably with a close blood relationship with the speaker. From the time the connector is a child, the speaker tells him about his life, every event, no matter how great or small, continued for years or decades until the speaker dies, resulting in the speaker's soul to dwell within the connector. This is believed to be how the connector continued his existence for a minimum of 1300 years so far. However, then a change occurred. The past generation Shen Wulong compared to the current began research through the worm involving cloning, with the current Shen Wulong being a clone of his predecessor. This is important as cloning is superior to Hushang, with the aim of creating the perfect connector. To get more of an understanding how this works, the same thing was done to create Gilbert Wu, a clone of Edward Wu, the Westwood faction's strongest fighter, with improvements made to his DNA, and he also inherited Edward's memories and techniques through Hushang once again, meaning the current connector did the same with his previous version, most likely having these same DNA improvements and all the techniques and knowledge gained over 1,000 years, as Hushang is confirmed to pass on techniques here. Therefore, to begin his scaling, let's look at the previous Shen's showings. Mukaku and 4 of his allies attacked him with advanced activated and couldn't even lay a hand on him, all being defeated low diff. Even the grandfather of Mukaku, the head of the dragon clan, had all of his warriors defeated alongside himself as one of the few to ever give Shen a wound. This already provides some base scaling. Mukaku is capable of clashing with Omas and the others at his old age, this while in base form, making Oma say the following after his entire interaction: he called himself a fraud, but his power was unfathomable. It's not just that he's strong, I don't want anything to do with him anymore. I don't know about the connector, but that old man's a monster in human form, and we later see the connector pretty much stun Oma upon seeing him. Additionally, this to me makes me think Mukaku and his 4 other allies in advance would be, I guess, a little bit above Oma or at least I would hope so when it comes to this realm of power as an individual, but you could argue that old age Mukaku is stronger than this version due to experience and his confirmed roid usage, wielding his highest physical strength when facing Shen before his death, and of course the most experience he's ever had. Still, 5 top tiers in the worm at the time in advance probably scale above Oma as an individual, or at least around that range, all getting destroyed low diff by a previous version of Shen. I don't think Oma would be capable of replicating this such feat. This is important as we can now go over the scaling chain in pretty much the top tiers of the universe, that being of the Kengan Association, with all these guys pretty much being relative. The characters include Jirota, Kano, Wulong, Ryan and Oma, people you all probably know. Additionally, we have Croaky, who I will regard as above these guys based on his showings against Shen recently in the manga, but I'll break that down in more detail later on. The reason the before mentioned guys are relative is Oma pretty much saying so when watching Kano fight Jirota, with that fight ending with Jirota's high diff victory and could have really gone either way at various points. We know Wulong and Jirota are relative as explained many times with the whole two kings aspect of Purgatory, and of course the amount of time Wulong spends actually praising Jirota. Oma in the Purgatory vs Kengan tournament defeated Wulong, and we know Ryan and Oma are relative thanks to the 2 years of sparring they did before Kengan Omega. Additionally, Wulong's official character profile says the following. Just as Carla says in the story, in terms of true strength and ability, Wulong can be perceived as greater than or equal to Ryan, and Ryan is approximately equal to Oma. However, since there's almost no difference in skill level between the three, it is absolutely possible that the ranking can change at any time, making this group scaling together more consistent, with Shen being considerably above all of these guys, and this is demonstrated with further inverse scaling. Let's take Edward Wu, who faced a group of the Kurei, which included Ryan. This same Ryan was the one compared in the Wulong character profile. He was much stronger than Ryan in this fight, regardless of the outcome. This is because the author claims in Eddie's character profile the following. It may not have been clear in the manga, but one of the reasons why Edward lost to Ryan was because of the effects of Wu Xing's poison. As we know, Wu Xing was able to land this deadly stab. Irio also states that if he was in his prime, he could beat Edward easily, but that is only Irio's subjective opinion. Until they actually fight, this result is inconclusive, as we know it's impossible for them to ever fight, which implies to me that they're most likely equal, which does make sense when you consider the following. Irio also claims in that fight that Ryan will surpass his prime, which makes sense when Gilbert Wu, the clone of Edward, and also having his techniques, memories, etc., is confirmed as stronger than Edward in the story. Gilbert also defeated Ryan and some other Kurei recently in the manga, meaning without a doubt someone like Gilbert Wu is above the top tiers of the Kengan Association due to this outright scaling above Ryan at this point. This relates to Wulong, as even Gilbert swears absolute fealty to the Connector, which means loyalty if you don't know. To tie all of this back into Mukaku and where he ranges, as Shen defeated him with absolute ease while nerfing himself, Shen says the following. You're strong, I admit it. I assume only a handful of the people close to me would be able to beat you, thinking that Yan would probably make the cut. When he talks about people close to him, that is really 4 characters. Yan, Gilbert Wu, the Tiger Nico, and maybe Luhan, with Shen believing that they would be able to defeat Mukaku, which once again puts them higher than the Kengan Association. Apart from that, we have some recent showings of current Shen, which makes it even more clear that he's way above everyone else. We have Misasa, the current Fang of Mitsudo, Jay, a captain, Takaba, a previous Fang and personal bodyguard of Mitsudo, alongside Hollis, a top level Kure member, all attack Shen with the use of weapons and get destroyed low difficulty while Shen isn't trying to kill them or going all out by any means. Shortly after that, we have Kuroki pull up on Shen with their fight beginning, and Kuroki was shown capable of actually harming Wulong with his Devil Lance via counters, making Shen even claim that Kuroki is the strongest person he's met in this country, which may mean he's stronger than Mukaku, but technically the previous version of Shen did meet Mukaku the first time in China, not Japan, so who knows. However, it's confirmed after their clash was cut short that neither fighter was going all out, with Shen only using half of his body to fight and doing very goofy attacks, clearly messing around, while viewing Kuroki as strong, who's confirmed not to be going all out as well. However, the portrayal in this scene was Shen messing around, having some fun, while Kuroki was being very serious, not going all out but fighting as careful as possible, with of course these counters. But still, the showings of Kuroki in this clash are still far more impressive than any other character we've seen so far. That's why I have Kuroki higher. However, we haven't by any means seen Shen go all out, meaning it's very clear that Shen is by far the strongest we've ever seen in the Kengan universe, in every aspect as well. Speed, technique, and raw power, as is confirmed many times in the series, that technique or one's mastery over techniques can amplify one's power, meaning it is time to break down some of the most wild showings of speed and power the characters in the Kengan universe have demonstrated, as Shen pretty much scales above all of this. Huge shout out to Nick Elson from the Discord providing some of the calculations used, but let's get into it. For strength or attack potency, we have characters destroying boulders evident on many occasions, one from Oma during the Annihilation tournament and is actually calculated to be building level, with some other showings like Sorpang's hammer being building plus, and even higher when you consider low tier characters like Karo the Fisherman having feats like this. However, the highest end of scaling goes from town to large town level. The first way to get this is when Wakatsuki was capable of shaking an entire mountain when punching Faye, with the following low to high end calculations being on screen. This can even be regarded as consistent, as when Waka and Julius clashed fists back in Kengan Ashura, it shook the entire arena, a weaker version of Waka compared to the mountain feat. Additionally, we have Takita Oma's Demon's Bane showing against his master, doing this to the forest. For reference, Demon's Bane involves Oma's power amped by the deflected power of his master in the scene, which involved a injured and younger Oma compared to later in the story. Additionally, smaller characters like Misasa can easily do this via the use of techniques and that amplifying one's AP. Shen, as we know, should scale above all of this. Even the Oma and Nico combined Demon's Bane showing, I'm not gonna lie. Other calculations have these feats around multi-city block level or 500 tons of TNT, which of course is much lower compared to the highball mentioned, which is 734 kilotons. So for now, I'll say he sits at town level due to scaling far above any character that performed these feats, with the possibility that he goes above with the mentioned highball, but this will be expanded on later. For speed, we have varying degrees to go over. We can start with simple stuff like Kiryu being able to move when someone blinks, Gaolang's jab speed, Oma and Ryan moving so fast it had a kinetic vision user like Yamashita struggle to see them, amplified to a higher degree when someone like Faye used his transformation, the Divine Demon, which actually has calculations in the hypersonic range. We have a narrator statement that Aunt Ray was moving so fast, not a single person could follow his movements, and of course, various bullet showings in the series. Akoya in this scene, Oma's master, Kuroki, and even Inaba dealing with this Tommy gun. Many of these have calculations that are in the subsonic range, with some argued as hypersonic as previously mentioned, and considering Shen scaling above all this, hypersonic is probably fair to grant. However, the highest end with Wang still needs to be discussed. This of course requires one not to consider statements as hyperbole, but we have Shen being possibly above light speed. This is because Carlos claims he's faster than light, and then his opponent Yao Lang unleashes his evolved punch known as the God Glow, which has the following narrator statement. He underwent insane partial training and came out with a new fist of steel, a fist that surpassed light and entered the domain of the divine, and naturally lands this attack on, I guess, the light speed Carlos, with Shen scaling above this as already established. So you could believe Shen is light speed, but this is by no means something people in the fandom consider as valid or consistent, just a potential super wank highball considering the narrator statement there. Skill is where the connector excels the most. This actually makes sense when he wields techniques honed over 1,000 years. This results in something beyond technique, as he claimed himself. This isn't about power, it's about technique. On second thought, maybe even that's not the right word either. Principles. Something that has not been fully explained in the series, but most likely refers to his absolute understanding of fighting and martial arts, and allows him to take out so many fighters without anyone really noticing, and with very little effort or difficulty. Shen even claims when facing Kuroki that he's only made it to pre-initiative, haven't you? A very crazy statement for the following reasons. Foresight is an ability in the Kengan universe that allows masters to infer their opponent's next move from subtle motions like muscle movements, changes in center of gravity, breathing, etc. With various developments like post and counter initiative, with pre-initiative being the pinnacle of this development, or at least that's what we previously thought, and involved reading your opponent's inception of intent and striking before they move or dodging before the attack is thrown, regarded by someone like Kurei Iryo as the ultimate power. It does have some counters such as striking quicker than the prediction and hiding the inception in your opponent's blind spot. However, as a whole, it is a very overpowered ability that allows one to dominate in a fight and actually beat people faster than them. And Shen claims that Kuroki is only at this level, meaning there are abilities far beyond that, and Shen most likely has access to them. Additionally, Kengan is a series that has far more martial arts than really any other, or at least when it comes to martial art based techniques. This includes baki. Just take a look at one martial art used by the protagonist, the Nico style, and the amount of things it is capable of. When it comes to hacks and bonus abilities of Shen that highlight how this is more so a monster beyond everything else in the Kenganverse, is the following panel. I've relocated my tendons and suppressed my muscle power output. I also limited my joints' range of motion. I brought my neurotransmission speed down to the lowest setting and shut down some of my brain circuits. I've come down to your level, let's enjoy the moment. Something in a new realm of insanity for this martial arts series, and still dominating mukaku in this fight when it comes to skill alone. The character who literally created the Nico style. Lastly, another ability connected to him being capable of living so long is the following: not breathing. It's claimed that all living beings age with every breath, so my predecessors thought we must simply stop breathing. That resulted in the development of this ability, something that even makes carbon monoxide poisoning ineffective and slows the aging process while not being a form of total breathlessness. And that's just what we've seen so far. He hasn't even got serious in any fight that we've seen him take place in, and even revealed the truth about his abilities by any means. Of course, I'll be keeping everyone updated about the truth of his abilities as we learn more in the future of the Kengan Omega story, so make sure to subscribe. But now it's time to go over his opponent, Yujiro Hanma, the strongest character in all of Baki for many reasons. The story tells us so many times. Even recently in the Baki manga, he's still regarded as the strongest creature alive. Yes, above his father, Yujiro. I've gone over this many times. Regardless, his attack potency is most agreed on with the earthquake scaling I've gone over many times, something that's actually consistent in the series and not an outlier by any means. We had Oliver making people think an earthquake was occurring when slamming Doyle. The imagination version of Yujiro created by Baki slammed Baki so hard people in the area thought an earthquake was occurring, and the aura of Yujiro alone shaking a skyscraper. With all this in mind, Yujiro being capable of stopping an earthquake early in the series I guess seems fairly reasonable. The caliber of this feat, however, is very hard to gauge. Calculations for it can go from town level to even higher than city. If we take the before mentioned possible highball for Wulong of the over 734 kilotons of TNT, due to of course the Oma and Nico Demon's Bane Forest feat provided by Nick, and his calculations for the Yujiro feat, he has that at 156 kilotons. Therefore, you can argue that Shen is stronger if you consider these calculations alone. However, other sources like the ones on Verse Battle Wiki have Yujiro's highball much higher, which instead would give Yujiro the advantage in this comparison, and the calculations provided for the Kengan stuff on Verse Battle Wiki is also much lower, meaning we don't really know for certain. Calculations for stuff like this isn't an absolute way to prove someone stronger. Even if they are feats these characters would scale above, it's still a little bit iffy to confirm. However, the range of power between the two seems to be a lot closer and more interesting to debate about than I guess a lot of you watching actually expected going in. Pretty interesting stuff. But what about Yujiro's speed in comparison? We haven't mentioned in the series that he's capable of dodging point blank lightning with an illustration of him doing so, but this didn't actually happen in the series. It's just discussed that he could do it. Baki, as you know, who Yujiro scales to and most likely above, easily deals with bullets. Likewise with Yujiro most likely during the Vietnam War. We also have this scene of him travelling this distance without the police seeing him move, and fighting against Musashi, a fellow top tier, at these portrayed speeds. They'd also have a high and low ball depending on whether you count these as zeros and the context of the scene. Some calculations actually have him from supersonic to very deep in the hypersonic ranges and even beyond. Additionally, we have ways to argue for lightspeed Yujiro as well. This is more so wank and a bit iffy, but I'll go over it. This is from when Baki was facing Musashi, who claims to have a lightspeed jab, with the narrator at the bottom here saying the same. However, this in the context of the following chapter leaves of course many questions. The previous chapter ends with the panel, with the next one going over how statements are more so hyperbole, and is this part of characters trying to overhype their own techniques with various names. A scene between young Baki and Yujiro explaining this, meaning it's most likely hyperbole, but still the narrator statement is there. Additionally, we have a moment during Baki's fight with Pickle, where he's claimed to reach a speed beyond the concept of speed itself, which can be used to argue someone like Yujiro, who scales above this version of Baki, is breaking into a different realm of speed entirely. However, this also features some context. The statement is from Pickle's perspective at that moment, as Baki was much faster than he was, with comparisons between him and a butterfly in Pickle's past, as pretty much a way to explain the panel and provide some arguments against it. Therefore, we have Yujiro, who most likely goes in the hypersonic range as well, but I would say the arguments for him going higher are better than the ones in Kengan, or at least there's more of them. Additionally, we have some durability scaling for Yujiro, namely him capable of tanking lightning that lingers for some time, an entirely different scene to the before mentioned him capable of dodging such. His father, Yujiro, surviving this amount of bombings on a small island, who Yujiro should scale to or most likely above as broken down in many videos, and various statements that he could survive, of course, nukes. No showings in the series of such, with some having context of him being in heavily populated areas all the time, while others just outright say he's above this level of power, which is kinda crazy. When it comes to skill, he's considered a peak martial artist, but doesn't really demonstrate it that much throughout his fights in Baki. He wins most of them by simply being stronger or faster than the opponent. However, it's claimed by Motobe that he knows all martial arts and seems to be capable of instantly learning them or adapting to them in real time. Some he's shown capable of using include Xiao Li, that can diverse the damage of attack or amp his power after being hit, also the whip strike which negates durability. He is pretty much a creature that continues to improve and get stronger over time, even passively based on various implications, and should have this similar mind reading ability as demonstrated by Baki and Masashi, and even Doppo having this as he was the first example, which seems to be very similar to how Foresight and Pre-Initiative works in Kengan, but could be argued as a more developed version if it's actual mind reading. When it comes to, I guess, pure insanity based things, we have his demon back, which amplifies pretty much every stat, and seems to be connected to the Hanma bloodline. Yujiro is a being that surpassed Baki's imagination, someone who has a demon brain and is capable of using imagination for dinosaur-based fighting styles that includes something like this, a monster. He also seems capable of seeing the weakness of anyone he lays eyes upon, as it just comes to him it seems like. Which brings us to the final question. Who would win this fight? Let me know what you think down below, and consider becoming a member if you want the ability to suggest future verse battle videos like this one. Overall, we have ways to argue they have similar speeds in AP, and even skill wise, both of them seem to be quite broken. Shen still has much more to show in the future of the story, and could have an even more insane feat in the manga, as a lot of his scaling comes from this being above the other characters. Yujiro, for all we know, could have a further crazy feat as well, as right now in the Baki manga, we are in the amazing Jack arc, with everyone continuing to get stronger. If we take statements, both seem to be above the military of an entire nation. If we take feats, Yujiro most likely has a better argument, but it's honestly very close. At the release of this video at the start of 2024, I'm still on the side of Yujiro and think he's stronger as a whole, but by no means I believe it's a one-sided stomp. If we even take the crossover chapter, we had young Yujiro being compared to a young Kuroki, which has current Yujiro much stronger than this, and Shen being much stronger than this version of Kuroki as well, meaning it could really go any way.